Hello, adventurers. My name is Tyler.
And I'm Richard.
On today's episode, we're giving our review of Dune, Adventures in the Imperium, Fall of the Imperium. He who controls the spice controls the universe. And welcome to True Strike.
Hey, howdy, folks, and welcome back to the show. Today we're talking about
Howdy.
Dune,
Yeah.
TTRPG.
Yes, absolutely. It's specifically Adventures in the Imperium too, because there's like Imperium stuff. That's just a board game.
That's right. Yeah, this is just what we have.
But this specifically is the new campaign,
Yeah.
Fall of the Imperium. It takes place parallel and adjacent all at the same time as the movie and or story continues. It's pretty neat. Our friends over at Modiphius sent this to us for review. So, Richard,
Yes.
I have to ask you.
Ask away.
Last week, you can see this episode if you tuned in. Well, I guess listen to. We played this. We played the first act of this game, and we might play more of it. What did you think?
I really hope we play more of it.
Really?
Yes, absolutely. I thought it was super fun. I enjoyed my time with it greatly.
Neat. I, as someone who, through sheer power of will and just slamming my head through reading a whole book and some other stuff, found this a very digestible system. It helped that we'd already ran Dreams and Machines, because you running that for me helped explain essentially like how some of the stuff worked. There are tweaks. It is not a one-to-one.
Yeah.
They're both in the 2d20 system though, so that helps a lot. But yeah, I might have a bias because I'm the one who ran this game instead of playing it. I think I might like this version better.
Yeah, so I thought it was actually going to be a more one-to-one to Dreams and Machines as far as mechanic was considered.
Right.
Until you started explaining them to me. And while there are similarities,
For sure.
there are
Yep.
larger differences. And so to be perfectly blunt, right, I had preconceived notions about these two games. I thought that I was going to enjoy Dreams and Machines more.
Right.
On a content level as well as a rules and engagement level.
Okay.
So I went in with that preconceived notion. Having played this now, I enjoyed Dune more.
Really?
Yes, I did. I enjoyed my time with Dune more than I enjoyed it with Dreams and Machines.
Which is funny because I don't want to get this wrong, right? I thoroughly enjoyed Dreams and Machines.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying
I would
didn't
play
enjoy
that
it.
again right now.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. I just had a lot of fun with this game. Like a lot of fun.
Yeah, same. I'm not going to go into Dune spoilers other than very, 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 very minor stuff towards the beginning. In fact, we won't go past anything in any kind of detail past what we did in the episode. What I will say is that if you are a fan of Dune, if you've watched the movies, if you have read the books, this campaign, this source book, does go past Dune into like the Dune Messiah era and stuff like that. So it goes past the movies. And I think that's actually really cool because it opens up vastly. So once you get past that, it's just like you have had a whole campaign to establish your characters and your desires and how everything's going. What do you want to do next? Like, just have at it. And up until that point, it's just threading back and forth through the story, of Muad'Dib's rise to power, of the Kwisatz Haderach, and just getting to like enjoy that from a perspective of there are bits in the story where in what we played today, I get to explain situations to you like, oh yeah, the Harkonnens are mad because you guys are replacing them, but oh well, they're going away. And if you've read, the book or seen the movie, that might turn around, at some point, and there might be some repercussions and there's things to look out in the future. But we have one player today who has no touchstone to any of this.
Yes.
So getting to go through and just explained that situation to him. He's like, oh yeah, I'd be mad too. I get it. Good thing they're gone. Like, yeah, totally gone. Not coming back. It's cool. And even if you know what's going to happen and you try to like metagame that, there are built-in suggestions and mechanics right out the gate, right? That are example, right? I'll say this. You guys were playing characters from the Quick Start adventure, so that anyone listening to that episode could pick up those character sheets, download them from Modiphius' website, and play them themselves and check them out deeper. And it was quick for us to get up and going, and great art and everything else. All of those characters, as the Quick Start, are from House Atreides. And I want you all, it wants you all to be from the same house as each other anyway, so there's no multi-housing, so it just made sense. A lot of people might pick this up and be like, well, I'm going to be House Atreides, right? From my point of view, might come out on top, like, well, the book points out, well, if that house is dead, if it's dying, if it's falling, why would you stay loyal to a house that no longer exists? That's weird. What's wrong with you? Maybe you should switch allegiances, Is that a choice maybe you have to make down the road? Like, do you stick with it? And does that pay off in the end? Does it not? Maybe people from that house look back on you and they're like, well, I appreciate the loyalty, but you're not a smart man. Like, why would you do that? Right. Like, a little bit of self-preservation goes a long way sometimes. And that is fully, not only it sets that up, but explains that that's possibly the right move in some situations. And we had one player actually kind of start to play the field a little bit. They had ties to multiple houses. In fact, houses that are completely juxtaposed, like completely opposite from each other. And I think that's cool because how it worked out towards the end of the session to be a negative, but how it could still become a positive at some point and how it plays in both directions. This was fun for me, and as a fan of Dune, and I want to play more of it. I was considering when we were going to run this adventure so that we could do the review, putting it together like a supercut almost of like events and like move you guys through the story and stuff so you kind of touch all of it. And the more I got into it, the more I realized I just wanted to run Act 1. It's so many chapters, and each chapter has like 3 acts, and there's like a beginning, a middle, and end. And I was like, let's just play the beginning. Let's set the stage. Let's see if the players even like it, and if jumping in from the beginning is fun. And overall, how did you feel about doing that?
Overall, I liked it. Like, I liked a lot. I liked where we jumped in. I really enjoyed the characters that we were offered.
Oh yeah, for Quick Start, they're built out so well.
Yes, and I found it actually like hard to choose what I was actually going to play because I had like a preconceived notion of what I was going to do. But like I said, I found myself looking at them and like, not really knowing what I was going to do.
Right.
And also like knowing a little bit about Dune, right? So like I don't know as much as like right? Because you've been doing a lot more Dune research than I have. So I only know so much. But trying to figure out where my place was going to be in this universe was interesting.
Yeah, the known universe is vast.
Yeah.
It's and that was a big thing. And you ended up deciding on the character I thought you were going to, right? You went with the Bene Gesserit.
Yes.
But it could have been the Mentat.
Yeah.
It could have been the servant. It could
like the servant. Yeah.
It was interesting. I expected someone to do the Swordmaster. No one cared about the Swordmaster.
Yeah.
That also
nobody
took me
cared
by
about a
surprise.
Swordmaster. Yeah.
So, and that's one of those funny things, right? Where like if my wife had been available and she had played, I think she would have went Swordmaster, or maybe Bene Gesserit. It would have been between those two. I truly believe, because she would either been like, let's murder everyone, or I want to be a cool space witch.
Yeah.
And as a novice Bene Gesserit, you're not out here using the voice and stuff, but you are using your awareness to really keep track of everything. And in a social game like this, where if you are having combats in every session, you're probably doing it wrong. We did end in a combat.
Yeah, we did end in a combat.
But we're talking hours into the game, and the
it
combat's
took us
relatively quick.
Many hours to get there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even the big bad, like, you managed to end them very quickly because you had a very good roll that happened to end up being exactly what you needed. So, and that almost went south for one of the characters.
Oh, yeah. No,
yeah.
for sure.
So,
there was a couple of times where I thought it was going to go south just conversationally.
Right.
And that's not even in combat. Like there were times where we had some like what I felt were like high stakes conversationally that felt like I was in the middle of like a high stakes D&D combat, but it's just talking, which is interesting, right? Because I'm like, oh, I don't know what I'm going to do here. This is a big move. And it's not like a big move in, like, oh, if I miss, they're going to like grapple me and, death touch me or something weird.
Right.
Like I said, it was more like the consequences of what I was saying and how it could change how we were moving forward, which was really interesting.
Yeah. And God, so much of this game is just all about that social, interactions and stuff. And to the point where it's almost fun to try to keep track of all the pieces. Because if one person's talking to one person, they get information over here. Are they going to share that? Are they not? Who's coming over here? What do they have to say? It's such a different vibe. And one of our players that has really just played Dungeons & Dragons, they were thoroughly impressed with this system. They said it took them off guard at how immersive it was and how it felt like they were on Arrakis. It's weird to say that, right? Sitting at a table, but they were on Arrakis. They could picture the environments. Mm-hmm. They knew because of this campaign running adjacent to the main story, the canon story, which you don't change. You do not adjust the canon story. That's one thing about this source book. The canon flows. It's much like spice.
Yeah.
You're just witnessing some of it from outside and then looping yourself through. Because there are characters and events that happen that aren't fully fleshed out in the book. You get to flesh them out at your table and tell the story of how your players were integral in those things happening, which is super cool. If we ever finish Curse of Strahd, I would love to actually go through and finish this. I think we could do it in less than 20 games.
I think that this has moved up on the list for me on what I want to play after we finish Strahd.
Right.
Like this is now moving way up there and bumping down other games that we've had on our list and other games that we're talking about. Yeah.
Because who would have thought Dune?
For me, it has moved up there.
No offense to Dune.
Which is saying a lot, I think, because like I said, I am not like a Dune super fan. Have I read the books? Yes. A long time ago, though.
Right.
Like I haven't reread them recently. I watched the first movie. Mm-hmm. I'm like halfway through the second movie right now. My wife keeps falling asleep, which is not a thing to do. And this is just my wife in movies. But yeah, so I'm about halfway through the second movie. But I'm saying I'm not a Dune super fan, which you would think you would need to be engaged in a tabletop version of a thing, right? An IP. But not when it's just as hooking as this, right?
Yep.
So like the story hooks you, the setting hooks you, the way that the game systems make you interact with NPCs and each other is very intriguing, and it's really neat. We even had a scenario where me and another person, which we're on the same team, we're working together, but ended up like using resources to try and hide things from each other, like back and forth. And we're talking about like single session resources, things that you would normally like people would save. Like inspiration is not really what it is, but the closest amalgamation to it would be inspiration.
Like super inspiration.
People using inspiration for like the
determination,
big bad,
so to speak,
or to do something, like very meaningful later on in the story was being used on a story beat between two player characters, which I find really interesting. And I really love how it set that up to be just like this conversational role-playing game that has higher stakes that aren't combat.
Everybody had their own
agenda.
So good. Everyone has their own motive and agenda. And we're talking some pre-generated characters. You guys
Yes.
didn't make these from scratch. You just fully enveloped these characters to who it was, made it your own. One of you dove so deep into the role play in a situation with an enemy, basically, that adding them as a like ally became a permanent trait for them.
Yeah.
Because at that point, and I told them to add that to their page because it made sense. Because they established through roleplay that they had background rapport together like prior to this game starting. And I thought that was super cool that you could just do that. Because in this game, you can make temporary traits that help out in situations. I could spend threat, or you could spend momentum to be like, oh, I throw sand in your eye. You're temporarily like partially blinded, right? And that would be a trait, right? That would make it to where the DC for me doing things is one harder or one easier for you to hit me. But you have to spend 2 momentum to do that. And there's all these mechanics. You can create temporary traits, but then as a GM, I could create permanent traits, which can always come back to help. Or, like I said, that friend of the enemy became a negative trait later on when, you confronted that enemy. And there's so much you can do. And one of our friends, one of our players, and I completely agree with him. His favorite thing was that the way the drives work with the skills, right? So I would say, hey, make me a battle skill. Or what drive do you want to use? And he'd be like, oh, I really think, this is going to call for this stat. And I'm like, okay, well, you're sure about this? You're like, yeah, it's going to be power because I'm trying to gain power at any means necessary. Like, all right, cool. Yep. If that's what's driving you to make this happen, go for it. And you would roll, that would be your total number. Like, oh, do you have a focus in this? And oh, I do, because my focus of this battle is assassination, and I'm assassinating this guy. Well, now, a 1 isn't a crit, because in a 2d20 system, 1 is the best you get, 20 is the worst you get a complication, which can come back to bite you.
Yeah.
And then, but now, because you have a focus in that with assassination, it becomes a 6 all the way down to 1 is a critical success. And all these things stack up, and you're going back and forth like, oh, well, you have this trait that actually makes it harder for you to pull this off. And you're like, yeah, but I have this weapon that makes it easier to pull it off. You're like, all right, cool. You need 2 successes. And then you roll your 2d20 and both are under that 6. Well, that's 4 successes. That's 2 wins and then 2 momentum going forward to help yourself or your friends later. It's super fun.
Yeah, it's really cool how all these mechanics like lend themselves to almost pleading your case.
Yeah.
Right? Like saying like, oh, I think this is what this is. And not even pleading your case, because sometimes it was more of a conversation with you as a game master too.
Oh, and that's how it's supposed to be. It's supposed to be a conversation.
Like, well, I know you said this, but like, how do you feel about this representation of this stat?
Yeah. And a lot of all the focuses very intentionally are vague. They're very vague. And if you can like, well, wouldn't you say, I'm escaping the situation? And I'm like, you're following a guy. Like, I'm escaping the bar to follow it. No, shut up.
Yeah, you're not escaping the situation.
But there's situations where that did make sense. Like, assassin, right? Assassinate. Like, you're coming up to attack this guy. It's not a planned assassination or whatever, but you're the one he's not expecting to be coming after him at all. I'll give you it once, I'll give you assassination as a focus this turn. And, sometimes that works out really well. And using your character's like build and essence and you're like looking at somebody, right? If an enemy is gauging the field, right? And they're looking at their threats and they look at you, the Bene Gesserit, and they're like, you're not my threat here. You're not walking around with a laser gun. You're not the bulky one. You're just trying to survive. Secretly, you've got the hidden dagger, and you're the one that's going to step up without, quietly, without making a single breath, knowing exactly where on the body to strike, and just, and it's so unexpected and cool. And you get to flavor that in to like the difficulty to hit somebody.
Yeah.
And then you're adding extra things to get more dice to roll. It's so cool. And you can make it to where, and encouraged to have skills of 0 sometimes. where you are trying to pull something off that you're like, you're guaranteed to do this
you're
thing.
gonna succeed.
You're
at this. Yeah.
great at this. Why would I make it? Why would I make you have a chance of failure? That's great. It means you roll, and all your successes are all momentum.
Yeah.
Moving forward, which just helps you down the line or helps you gain information. Which for you, every time you did that,
I was trying to get as much information as I could.
Or your buddies, it helped them out.
Yeah.
And it was neat as heck. I thoroughly love this campaign.
Yeah, it was like I said, I had preconceived notions with it, and it exceeded expectations for me.
Yeah.
Like it really, really did.
How did you feel about the campaign so far? Like meeting Iben and going to the wall and like, you know, another house that you don't really hear about in like the movie and stuff, in the book, like getting to know people from that and why they're there. And overall, like, so for act 1 of this whole campaign, that's what's wild about this.
Yeah.
Is I have touched on this whole book. You don't. All I could say is that it's more of that, except it grows.
Yeah.
And moves throughout the story.
Which is interesting because I purposefully did not really look at this book.
Yeah.
Like,
and then now it's just open towards you.
I looked at it because I wanted to see like the artwork, and I wanted to see the layout and everything like that. But I didn't read anything in it because this is all campaign stuff.
Yes.
So there's no rules in here to read really for me to know what I'm doing. So there was no reason for me to read this, and it was just going to spoil me on things.
Right.
And I didn't want that. So my cursory glances over the book didn't give me any kind of input onto that. I am really enjoying the story so far, like how things are set up.
Yeah.
And I only know what you as a game master have told me and have set up for us. So I don't know how many different ways all of this could have gone, but it all felt very organic.
Mm-hmm.
And I really like the direction that things were going.
So let's look at one part. Let's look at one scene, right? You guys decided to work with House Ikaz to go against House Harkonnen, right?
Yeah.
You could have very easily. This isn't right. I want to actually gain favor with Harkonnen. I'm going to turn in Ikaz and this lady and her friends to Harkonnen. I'm going to report this. And it's a whole other like scenario where there's no fighting. It's just reporting a situation. And guess what? Maybe you just do it out of the goodness of your heart and you gain favor. Maybe you barter with the Baron and you get a favor in return from Harkonnen and this whole thing. Or you set up both to basically kill each other and you take the spice and you get out, right? Similar to how one player had almost ran it.
Yeah.
And those are just the 3 options there. You could just ignore the whole thing, right? And just let it naturally play out in the background. Which
was also another direction that one of the players wanted to take, or was like presented at the table. Yeah, considered at the table.
Why do
we have to, do this? Why don't we just do nothing? Right. Kind of a situation. So yeah, I thought that was pretty interesting, and I like the way that the story is going. You already answered one of my biggest questions, which was how much the story marches around this campaign, which it does. You said the story marches forward regardless kind of what your players are doing.
Oh,
right?
yeah.
As far as like the actual mainline story beats.
Yep. Paul's journey to being the Kwisatz Haderach in Muad'Dib continues. It's just ever present, regardless of your character's influence or deaths or anything like that. The mainline story happens. You are acting around it. You are witnessing it. You are sometimes creating events that transpire during it. But the events will happen. They were going to unfold. Yeah. You can be directly affected by the events that happen. Spoiler alert, if you play more, you will be.
Yeah.
But how do you react to that?
Yeah, how do you react to that, and how do you further your side of the story, I guess, is really what it comes down to.
And it's one of those things where I think our mix of players with different levels of, not experience, but drenchedness, what am I even saying? Exposure to the story of Dune is interesting, right? Because if some of the big events that happen in the story happen to you guys or happen around you guys, what will the different, like, will you be shocked when the big events from the first movie in the beginning, first half of the book take place, but one of the players might be totally blindsided.
Yes, completely blindsided.
And how will each of you react? But it doesn't mean it's unplayable or enjoyable one way more than the other, because just because you're expecting it to happen doesn't mean the game hasn't taken that into account. And all throughout it, there's different bits of advice on whether your players know or do not know, what to expect on the main narrative, on, how that's going to affect theirs. And just how it's just weaving you back and forth, and how it's all politics, right? At the end of the day, it's all politics, and how helping ECAS can have great implications for your future, and whether they help you in the future, or whether they turn you in and, backstab you, or one team does this, or how. So it's all just narratively tied together, and you could have made any choice you want in that moment. You could have helped eat one side, the other side, no sides, both sides, whatever.
Yeah.
And it all continues.
I like that. And like I said, so far what we've seen of the campaign, what we've played, was thoroughly enjoyable. I liked it. I liked how everything was fleshed out. I liked the characters that were in this. The setting is really cool. And like one of our players did say, is that like how they felt like they were on Arrakis.
They could picture it.
Yeah, you could picture it. And you really could. Like, it felt really good. Like, everything about it just felt very immersive.
Yeah.
And it was easy to drop right into the roles that we had picked and immediately just kind of start playing in that world. So I felt very natural.
Good.
Yeah.
That's best case scenario for any system like this. One big thing about this book, if you are picking up Dune, Adventures in the Imperium, Fall of the Imperium, they want you to buy the core book. They want you to buy the core rule book. None of the rules are in this book.
Yeah, we kind of touched on that earlier, is that like that's the main reason why I didn't even look at it, was because there are no core rules. Correct?
Nothing.
There's nothing in here.
It's just story.
So this is a module,
yes,
of a story that you're playing. Yes.
There are, like, if you get Agents of Dune and stuff like that, that comes with an adventure and a PDF of the whole core rule book and some other like knickknacks and stuff like that. That's a good way to go. But if you're gonna run this whole book, you can get like the quick start guide for free off Modiphius' website. You can get that and get through this and have a good time. Highly recommend picking up the core rulebook too if you're looking to play this, or even if you get the PDF of it. Either way, have it available to you.
So, question: is there a single core rulebook, or is this like
single
Dreams
core
and Machines,
rulebook,
where there's a core rulebook and a player book?
Only one.
Or one book. Okay.
Yep. It's meaty, but it exists.
Yeah.
There's that. There, in this book, there are multiple areas where it's like, hey, if your players have already played these books, feel free to run those first and then this part. Or, hey, if your players haven't played any of these other books, this would be a great jump off point to jump in and play those campaigns and then come back into this one, because timeline wise, it works out. And I'm like, man, they want you in this one book. They're encouraging you to buy the core rulebook and every other module they've ever written.
Because it's all connected.
It is all connected, right? And it's cool because I get it, and I fully understand why you would want to do this. Because man, if you wanted to run your best Arrakis Dune fan game, whatever, you could do it. You could have your fully fleshed out giant game in the Imperium, and then all tie it back in together where it ties into the actual narrative of Dune. It's really cool how they did it. The art, you touched on it a bit. The art is gorgeous in this book, just like Dreams and Machines. Modiphius' art is amazing.
Yeah, so I personally, like I said, I'll ask you your opinion in a second here. But when you got this book, I started glancing through it, purposefully not reading anything.
Yeah.
But the very first thing that I noticed is that this book is absolutely gorgeous.
Oh, absolutely. From cover, spine, back cover, it's
everything about this book is gorgeous. And I immediately had it to compare to the Dreams and Machines book.
Oh, of course.
As well as some other Modiphius books that I've read through and looked at. This one is by far the best as far as production value, if you ask
so
me.
pretty.
Now, I haven't seen the core rulebook, right? So
Right.
I haven't seen
Yeah,
that
yeah.
yet. I haven't
Right.
seen their other modules, but this specific one right
Mhm.
here is beautiful. The artwork is really, really good. The page layout and the way things are presented and the artwork along like the bindings and all the boxes and text boxes and
Yeah.
fonts and everything like that, absolutely gorgeous.
All of it.
The content, I didn't read it, so I can't speak to that. But as far as like from an art and visual standpoint, this book is striking.
There are 2 complaints I'll have about the art. One, there's not enough of it. There are many scenes, right? Where let's go back to our friend Ivan. Full page stats, he's got full art, everything, right? Then you go to the other significant NPC, Final.
Final, yeah.
Nothing.
No art. Yeah.
Not a single tiny bit about her or her friends or the bad guys for the scene. Nothing for any of them. You get a scene with an ornithopter towards the end. That's it. And does this even actually belong in where that area is that you play in? No, this is the ornithopter coming back into Arakeen. So you have nothing. You have nothing for that. So I need more art. The art that's here, gorgeous. I understand those artists get paid a lot of money, hopefully, and maybe they couldn't, do a whole ton of it. Every single bit that's here, glorious. I love it, except for this. In the very back of the book, you get a map of Arakeen. It is not a punch out. It's not a fold out. Nothing. It feels like you're getting half of a map, and it feels like there should be more. There's not.
Yeah, it looks like it's actually been cut.
It does.
So
it looks like it's been
cut out. So you're missing the city down here. You're missing the city over there. You're missing over here as well.
This is one of those situations where they're like, buy the other 4 books and put them side by side, and you get the whole map. And I'm like, oh, cool. That's exciting. And then one day I'll have the whole map of Arakeen, and that would be neat. But like, because I can flip through, and I'm like, there's not a ton. But when you do get the art,
yeah, when you do get the art, I love it.
It's so cool.
It looks really good.
It's wonderful. But there's just not enough of it. I want more.
So you want more artwork.
I want more art. And that's only because they spoiled me with how good it is. Yeah. I want more.
No. And you know how I am about art. More art is always better.
Oh, of course.
And I love full page art. I love fold out art. I just love all of that. I think it's interesting because when we look at comparatively, like Modiphius in the other books that they have, so in Dreams and Machines, I feel like there actually is more artwork.
You got a ton
Dreams
of art.
And Machines books.
Yes, I agree.
Is it on par with the Dune art? I don't think so.
That's where it gets interesting, right?
I think it's not. So it's more art, but it's not as good art as this. Being a module, it would have been really cool to see more stuff with this, I think.
It's not a big book. It's like 135 pages.
Yeah. So like if you would have had like cards to present to us or like postcard size things that like show environments, or even just playing card size things to show like an NPC or something like that you could present to the players.
Oh, collector's edition this with extra features would have been really so cool.
Way. Yeah, because that artwork is something really cool that I think would be a benefit to be able to show your players. To, like,
I agree.
Hand across, because this is artwork that you want to show off.
So here in they have Dune, like Agents of Dune, right? This is one of the things I mentioned, picking up. Because if you purchase this, it comes with like a whole house, art for everybody. It comes with dice, it comes with cards, it comes with like a little board for tracking things, and it comes with a PDF of the core rulebook. I think this is the essentials kit, right? And you could get this, and you could play these characters in this module. And you would have access to a PDF of the core. I think at the very minimum, if you're picking up this book and you own nothing Dune, pick up Agents of Dune, download the PDF, read through everything, and then you have all this, right? This even has its own module built in. You could play that. If you don't want to go that route, you just want to make everything up, buy the core rulebook, buy this, you're good to go. You want to struggle bust through it, download the Quick Start Adventure, read through that, play this, you're still going to have a good time.
Yeah.
You're just not going to get every rule 100%.
I was going to say, you did say that you believe that using the Quick Start Adventure, you could make it through this.
Yes. Are you going to have all the rules for things like, how does the poison of a dagger work? No. That's not available to you.
Yeah, so you'll have to make up a little bit on the fly or
But
do a little bit more research.
exactly. You can find this information online. You can as long as your group, you're on the level with each other and you're having fun. It's all about telling a story. You can figure out how everything works, to your best. You can make this work and just buy this one. They want you to buy more to have the best experience. You probably should buy more.
Mm-hmm.
But this is great. And I wouldn't skip this because you had to spend. I would let the cost deter you because you have to dive in so deep, right? I would play this and get through it with the quick start if you need to. There's another cost I'm skipping. If you're gonna play this, read Dune.
You think read Dune?
I think
no. Okay, hold on. Are you saying this if you're going to run this, play or read Dune?
Yes.
Or are you saying if you're going to be associated with this at all, player and or game master, read Dune?
I think if you're going to be a player, for best experience, watch Dune. I had one player who has zero experience with Dune, and I had to explain what an ornithopter is. That's okay. I do not mind doing that because it's really cool, and I want to. But if I say the word ornithopter, and you've seen the movie, and you know what an ornithopter is, you can picture it.
Yeah.
You can imagine the way the wings blur as they move so quickly and how everything just makes sense, right? You know what a shield looks like, a personal shield. If it says shield on your inventory and your assets,
true,
and you've no experience, you're picturing a shield. I wouldn't picture a thing that gives me a slight blur, that like a blade that like quickly comes in will be deflected, but one that has like a skilled, steady, slow blade will start to turn the shield like a vibrating, shimmery red as you start to pierce right through. It's so cool. And if you at least watch the movies, you can picture it all. Plus, this is parallel to the story. If you want to go in blind, do it. You can, obviously, right? It's fine. Right? Yeah. You'd be more shocked by the story if you don't.
You'd be more shocked by the story. I think probably the most important thing there is that there are specific beats that probably need to be gone over in a little bit more detail.
Mm-hmm.
Like one of our players, the one that he has no exposure to Dune.
Yes.
Not knowing anything about worms.
Right.
As far as like the danger that they pose.
So this was one thing though, right? Because he did not know the danger they imposed, right? His character just, like how much experience does he have here on Arrakis? I guess that depends on the character, right?
Yeah, I guess it depends on the character, yeah.
Like, are you just arriving with, House Atreides, which you guys were from, but you don't necessarily have to be from them. So sometimes it makes sense. How much time, even if you spend time in Arrakis, how much time have you spent outside of Arrakeen? His character specifically spent a ton of time in Arrakeen, left Arrakis, came back, still in Arrakeen. It could go either way. I would think he probably has some sort of like, God-fearing self like from these worms. He didn't have that.
Yeah.
Had no sense of scale to the sandworms. Sure. So that's one of those situations. If you are running this game, you're the GM, read the book, listen to the audio novel, get through it because there's so much more. And they got in what they could in the movies, right? It's an epic. You have to watch both parts to see one movie, essentially. Anyway,
yeah.
It's so much, and the book is fantastic. Read the book, listen to the book, get the book into your heart and mind and soul, because it will make running this game so much better.
Yeah. Do you think that's because of the environmental standpoint of things or the political standpoint of things, as far as like the houses are considered?
Between the two,
yeah,
the politicals,
yeah.
This module does not hold your hand in explaining what anything is. And if it brings up something and explains like a society or a house or a school or whatever, and you don't know what that means, it's not going to tell you. It expects you to know.
Yeah, it expects you to know
those
things. Yeah.
Hey, I'll take it. They steamrolled straight through in 135 pages, got a whole campaign out. And it's funny how dense it is, right? Because that whole game we played, right? Hours we played was like 9 pages of the book. Right.
Yeah.
Like, there's just so much that happens in so little. We'll have a whole section that takes us an hour to get through with branching options. Will be a couple paragraphs, and each paragraph is the different option. And you just run with it. It's cool.
Yeah. I think that was probably my biggest concern was coming into this, because I knew you were reading the books.
Yep.
Right. And I know that it's been many,
Years.
many moons since
Right.
I've read those books. And even I haven't rewatched the first Dune,
Right.
Or the original Dune movie in years. Right.
Those shields.
So I just jumped into, Dune 2 because it was a recent release. And like I said, we haven't even finished that yet. So my knowledge of Dune was based off of old memories, essentially. So that was my biggest concern was coming in was like, man, am I going to need to know a lot of Dune to fit into this world and to fall into it? So I was kind of nervous about that.
Right.
But I didn't feel that way once we started playing.
Yeah.
And I don't think the other players did either, especially the one that's never played
Literally
Dune.
nothing. Right.
Yeah. Or, has nothing with Dune. Didn't seem like he was struggling too far to jump right into it, other than not knowing what an ornithopter was right off the jump, or not knowing what shields were and how they operated, which is all fair.
You can explain that away too. Of, hey, you know what? He's running a pre-gen character, sure, but maybe his character doesn't know what an ornithopter is. Maybe it's super common. Maybe he should know, but maybe he doesn't know.
Yeah.
Or me just explaining it to the player. 30 seconds, then I get to show him a picture, and he gets it. He thought it was weird and didn't make sense, but he's wrong. It's super cool, and it makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Obviously.
So yeah, you think there's some required reading for running this game?
I absolutely would not recommend running this unless you have, at the minimum, watched it. Oh, God. You know what? The more I think about it, do not run this unless you've at least watched the movies, the recent movies, and I highly recommend at least reading the book. I say at least watch the movies, read the book if you can. Because it's just going to make everything make more sense to you. And if you can picture things and you know what it all means and it makes sense to you, it'll make sense to your players.
Mm-hmm.
It's not required reading for them. They're not reading this. They're not interpreting the pages and what it means. You are. And if you don't paint them a word picture, they're not going to see it.
Yeah.
And you got to know what those words mean.
So what is your overall thoughts on the layout of this book? Because like I said, we've talked about the art. We've talked about what I've seen in it. But you're the one that actually read this book, the actual module itself. Very
off the jump, right? One of the important things that I like they do is really well is right here, this campaign overview. I'm not going to get into index and stuff like that, like you ran into with the other one, because it's very small and I never had to reference it because there's no rules in here anyway.
Yeah.
This tells you all 5 acts of the campaign. Sorry, 4 acts of the campaign. Each has like 3 little chapters, right? That's it. That's the whole game. And I can tell you, you guys ran this one, Embers of Hatred. This is a synopsis of what you guys did in 1 paragraph. Here's the next one. Here's the next one. End of chapter. Right here, it tells you how the next chapter starts. Here's what the players are going to do. Here's what the players are going to do. The players are going to do. End of chapter. And you can just read this as the GM. Takes you 5 minutes, 10 minutes. You really, really read through it, detail, memorize it. And you know where the campaign is going to start, where it's going to bring your players, and where it's going to end.
Mm-hmm.
And that is invaluable. That's amazing. There's a little bit here telling you how you should use the canon to your advantage and tie to it. How, if you're going to expand from the canon, be very careful. And how alliances can reward you or hinder you greatly. And how if you're making characters from scratch, here's some example traits you might want to throw in. Friends of House blank, which we used in this game. It's really good. I wish there was more art. The built-in character stat blocks are incredibly easy to use. If it's a smaller time character, like the Phenols Burns Kill Squad, right? If I'm doing their role, we're in a battle, bam, battle 6, Their drive is 6. Doesn't let me choose their drive because it's just a small time character. It doesn't matter.
Mm-hmm.
Here's what they do. Here's their weapon. Here's their skills. They have a improvised weapon if they need to, etc. You get to the bigger characters like Fennel Byrne herself. She has a full stat block, and it's because you're using her in more than just a fight. You can actually do political climate and stuff like that. So you might need to know what's driving her in a situation. So she has a full character stat block and stuff. It's great. Everything is where you want it to be for the most part. There's a couple back and forth. But that's, you got to fit it all in somewhere. I mean, I can't expect them to go back and forth over and over again, just repeat information.
Yeah.
As far as how information is laid out chapter to chapter, easy peasy, very easy to follow. How it tells you the branching options, very easy to follow. It's like if they choose this, if they choose this, if they choose this, and you just go to the one and you just move on from it. It all ties back in. Layout's great. I don't have any issue with it. That overview at the beginning is my favorite part because that just sums up the entire book on 2 pages.
Helpful. Yeah.
It's great because you read that and you plan your whole campaign.
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to read through the entire book before you play. You can legitimately read the next chapter before you play the game and have it fresh on your mind and run it.
Yeah.
And because you already know how it's all going to go and it took you 10 minutes, it's cool. I have no real complaints other than artwork, and be prepared to dump in money if you want the full experience, but do not feel like you have to have the experience in general.
Yeah. So now, based on what we played this afternoon,
Yep.
And what we finished on there, how many hours was the game that we played? Do you know off the top of your head?
Oh, goodness. 3-4?
3-4 hours. So if it was...
We did spend about an hour 20 just going over characters and rules and stuff, but that's because I wanted us to be able to start with most of that knocked out so we didn't have to go over it while we were playing, because that would have had an extra hour and a half to the video.
Yeah, so that's 4 hours then. We're just going to say round it up to 4 hours.
Yep.
And then now knowing from the beginning of this what this whole campaign looks like.
3 little chapters per act.
What's your estimate to run through this entire book based on our miles per hour that we were running?
I mean, I think if you've got a group that you're not on a strict schedule, right? If you can knock out an act in 3 to 5 hours, or, a chapter of an act, we're talking 15 hours an act, roughly, right? 4 of those, 60 hours.
60 hours. And
you finished the whole game, give or take, depending on players. And we could have finished this much quicker, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of, at the wall, there was back and forth, and little bits of people like, oh, I'm going to roll this to try to keep this secret and this and that, which is great. That's the game. You don't have to do that.
Yeah. True.
It could take longer.
There's a half hour of me and another player just trying to hide stuff from each other.
Right. So it could go either direction. If I say 15 hours an act, we're looking at 60 hours total. And that's not including if you don't, expound upon after the campaign ends and just into the stars. You could run a whole thing on this.
That's a fair amount of hours for a book this size.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
But in how much of that though is the players and the GM just playing a game, just having fun and making up stories together?
Well, I think that's the kind of the appeal of this type of game though, whereas there's not a lot of combat.
Right.
There is more opportunity for that kind of gameplay.
I'm glad you said that. If you are looking for a high combat, mechanically dense game, this isn't for you. This is not high combat. You can die very easily. There will not be a lot of combats. In fact, combat is almost always the last option. You don't want there to be combat. Combat is bad for everyone, usually. You can come out on top and combat can be satisfying. We didn't even get into actual duels, but duels get deep, right?
The
to the point
sounded
you're one-on-one targeting parts of the body, and
what you explained to me, I was like, man, maybe I should have played that Swordmaster guy.
Dude, it's really cool, and it all the way out to full on wars. There's so much and so much scale It's really cool. But the game system of the 2d20 never changes. It just scales up and down. But with that, as cool as the battles can be, there's not a lot of them. Don't expect a lot of them. In the rules, your entire character sheet, which is all you really needed as a player, is 1 page.
Yeah, it was 1 page.
So it's not deep on either side of it, right? As the GM, I didn't have a ton of prep. You know what I mean? Like I didn't have like clipboards everywhere, maps of everything. You can kind of just move from one beat to the next. And since minor enemies go down in 1 hit, you're not tracking health, right? Even the big bads, every success against them is 2 points against their battle, which is basically their health. You still killed the big bad in 1 hit because you had enough success.
Yeah, well, I got lucky.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But that's how it works. You rolled extra dice by choosing to spend a currency, and it's cool. You played your strengths as your character to pull that off, because you weren't a threat at the time as a Bene Gesserit. You had one real shot to make that happen at the DC you had, and you did it.
Yeah.
That's
I didn't even
how
think
it
we were
works.
going to get into a combat, honestly.
Right.
Because
you could have avoided it
yeah,
entirely.
the way things were going and looking at the timing and everything like that, and I was like, okay, we've been playing for a while.
Yeah.
We haven't had a combat. We've been somewhat like, we've been in some high tension scenarios.
Right.
But never where I thought we were going to really come to blows, honestly.
Yeah.
And then I was like, I'm not sure if we're going to have a combat, like, at all. And I was like, I don't mind. Like, we could have a combat or not. Everything is going really fun right now, regardless of the fact that there's no combat.
There were multiple points where I thought we were not going to have a combat, because the other options of either letting them fight each other, ignoring it, or ratting out the one house, none of those ended in a combat. You chose the only route that ended in a combat.
Okay.
And that's not a bad thing.
No.
That's the route you chose. It's the route I was hoping you would choose, actually.
It was satisfying.
Because I was hoping we'd get to try a combat.
Yeah.
And
I'm glad that we did get to see a combat, just so
Yeah.
that we could see how the mechanics work. And it was very satisfying.
Mhm.
Like, the combat, it's not an afterthought, I don't think.
No,
I think
no,
the
they
combat
definitely
works
put thought into
really,
it.
really well.
I
for
like
what it
that
is.
when you're attacking a character, and I mean play character or non-player character, when you're attacking a character, the DC, the successes needed for hitting them is set by that character that's being
by that
attacked.
character, yeah.
So if you're attacking me, I'm attacking you. Before you make the attack, the other person sets, the challenge
Mhm.
by rolling for successes, and you could get a 0, but then you have your assets that come into play, and none of you had shields. So
yeah,
like,
no.
oh, but you have a dagger. Okay, that can be used for parrying. So you've got a +1 to that. It was just really cool.
Yeah, no,
because-
I really do enjoy the way the D20 system works in that
Me
respect.
too.
It is very clean.
Mhm.
And I think that this just takes the D20 system that we already kind of learned in Dreams and Machines, and it flips it just ever so slightly, but in a more entertaining way.
I felt like when I read through this and I really put together the pieces of just how slightly different it worked with drive and skill versus how it was in Dreams and Machines.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me that I was like, I think I prefer this. It actually it flowed better. And that was just me reading it, though. I didn't get to play it. And then we sat down and actually played it. And the way all three of you know, like, I think I said it like once, like exactly how the focus really worked. And once it clicked, that was it. It was like, oh, cool. Well, I want to use this because it's my focus, and a 7 and under is my crit. That's really cool, because even at that, okay, 7 is a high number. Combine that with your other number, and now it's like, okay, if I get a 15 or less, it's a success. But if I get less than a 7, it's 2 successes.
Yeah,
it's awesome. And this game wants you to succeed. It wants you to play in your strengths. And something we didn't even really get into is when you become what's the word? Predictable. Maybe you fought the same kind of bad guys a few times. Not even bad. Who's good and who's bad in this world, When you fight the same kind of people, the same house, maybe they learn to expect your techniques, and they have defenses and stuff set up to directly go against the, you know, skill that you're strongest with. Well, now it's a harder DC or a harder, you know, skill check you got to meet because of the choice you made. Like, oh, or you're using your, you know, battle. Well, they know you're, you know, a head first, I'm going to fight you kind of person. They're ready for that. You know, they came prepared with shields and stuff. Maybe if you had just tried to talk through the scenario, you could have actually gotten through it easier. But so that's cool too. It keeps characters, you know, the player characters on their feet. It's cool. I'm super into it. I want to play more.
Oh,
I'm sad we're so busy all the time.
I want to play more Dune.
Why can't we just, you know, make money playing board games, Richard?
That's the dream.
Man.
So if you had to rate this book.
Oh, like a True Strike rating of like...
True Strike rating.
What are we talking, like 1 to 10?
Yeah, like we'll just say 1 to 10. What are you going to give it? I can't rate this book.
Yes, you can.
I can rate my experience.
Do it.
And my experience was an easy 9 out of 10.
This keeps popping off. 9 out of 10. Oh, God, it's really popping off.
You're going to die.
9 out of 10.
My experience was a 9 out of 10.
I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I want more art. And I wish it did tell you the rules so that you didn't have to reach out and purchase more, right? I wish you could just pick this up and not have to look further. Even if it had the equivalent of the quick start rules in here. To have to know to go on Modiphius' website and find them and stuff. Even though they're free and available, I wish you didn't have to do that. If it included a PDF for some of the core rules, that would be acceptable. But it doesn't. So with that, 8 out of 10.
Cool.
I would like to play through the whole campaign.
Oh, I want to finish
and
it.
I might change my mind. You know, it might go up. It might go down. It'd probably go up, but that's going to be a bias of, you know, because I know you guys are good, you know, great players and we're going to have a good time playing it. So yeah, I'm going to give it my Tyler True Strike rating of 8 out of 10. Your experience of 9 out of 10. It's solid. This is really good.
Solid. If you're a fan at all of Dune, I think it's definitely worth it.
Oh, if you're like a Dune super fan too, like if you've read the books and you love the movies, this is a 10. Just pick it up.
Yeah.
And, oh, man. Anything else?
No, I think that covers it.
Thank you, Modiphius, for sending this over to us. I loved it. I can't wait to play more of it. I highly recommend everyone check it out. I'll have links to it in the description. But for now, I've been Tyler.
And I've been Richard.
We've been True Strike. Hey, adventurers. Thanks again for joining us today. Please be sure to give us a follow on your favorite podcasting platforms and YouTube. If there's any questions you'd like to write into the show, you can hit us up on X, Threads, or Instagram. New episodes release every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you for listening to True Strike.